We're going to talk about how time shifts and pieces of ourselves, almost like parallel selves or twin selves, can be stuck in a time parallel to ours. We're going to look into the Voynich manuscript and the elixir of life and how we are immortal and how there are principalities or powers or energies who steal our energy to keep us ignorant so that we aren't aware of how we are being manipulated in unseen ways. We're going to talk about becoming adept like Doctor Strange and stepping into our power and not be distracted or persuaded or tempted into being less than what we are meant to be. We're also going to talk about timeline shifting. Brandon, notice this boomerang looking symbol is a symbol in Norse mythology. And you have a father beside you that looks like Noah with eyes with lights coming out. He has a rainbow that is twisted a little bit to the side. And you have a face that is going right side up. But you have something on your head that is also twisted to the side, meaning that there is something that has occurred between you and your father where you have shifted timelines, and the shifting of timelines happens behind the scenes. Your dad is in front of 4 mountains. One of the mountains has a dragon, one of them has an alien, and then it has the word voy, like the Voynich manuscript, and some symbols of you guys having lifetimes in the Civil War. There's a symbol of you being connected to vampires. And I believe that the vampires have now become an allegory. Like, for instance, when the Christ energy died on the cross for our sins, we didn't have to die on the cross anymore in the physical. We had to allegorically die of our ego and of our limited understanding as a metaphor instead of actually having to do it. And so the vampire may have at one time had to drink ambrosia or blood to live forever, but now our energy is being siphoned invisibly, not in literal terms, not in the physical. And many of us do things on the invisible realm, including helping people, healing people, healing them before they pass, or even helping people pass to the other side. And this Voynich manuscript has water that looks like the water in your piece with souls in it. Now, you know that we are mostly water, and when we pass, our blood goes back into the ground through the sewer system and back into water, right? Well, there seems to be some kind of phenomenon that's happening where your dad is on another timeline spiritually, and you help people pass from this timeline to the timeline connected to some father figure that is not on the same timeline, or at least your double selves are not. The Voynich manuscript is a language that contains and encodes the wisdom of a solitary intelligence. It is obscure. It seems to be connected to the Hermetic community. There seems to be wisdom in them that I believe are alchemical wisdoms of our transformational process and how we don't die and how our consciousness shifts and changes from one realm to the other. This manuscript seems to be connected to the zodiac signs and some images that look like we are living on a realm that looks like a clock. Many people assume it to be the work of mystics, magicians, witches, hoaxers. And some people say that they are actually artificial intelligence. And I would have to agree with all of that. I believe that there is an artificial intelligence which takes our physical body away from our double, and we have to connect flesh with spirit by aligning our flesh with our spirit and our double in order to be powerful. But there seems to be some communication within your art where your double works with a parallel timeline that is not your timeline to help people cross into parallel realities. Now you see the symbol of this star-looking flower? This is above your head in your piece that's in the Voynich manuscript. It seems to be a communication that our mind is eternal. Our memories are eternal. Our consciousness can bounce from one reality to the other if we connect with that reality or that body or that energy. So if you look closely at this manuscript, it is literally a map of how our consciousness, our physical body, and our double seems to be cut like Osiris's body was cut 14 times into different dimensions so that we don't have pieces of ourselves as one, because then we would be powerful. Watch this video that explains how the mirror is cut and how our souls are cut.
Guys are going to hate this one, but we could turn our 2D friend into their mirror image by rotating their entire body around a line. For a brief period halfway through, most of their body was missing from their 2D world, except for the vertical line around which they were being rotated. A 4-dimensional creature could turn us into our mirror image by rotating us in the 4th dimension around a plane that cuts through our body. For a brief period halfway through our rotation, most of our body would be missing from the 3rd dimension, except for the vertical slice around which we were being rotated. And that would be quite a frightening sight for anyone here to witness.
So look at how the rainbow is rotated in your piece, and how this letter V from Voynich is rotated. And this rotation is a cutting of our spirit or our consciousness into parallel realities. I know it gets complicated, and I'm myself a little bit confused, because this person in your piece has been cut. And this cutting has to do with the rainbow. So notice that your dad above you, the rainbow is now right side up instead of sideways, right? So there seems to be a cutting of our consciousness and our spirit. And for a brief moment, there's a piece of ourself that's missing in the other world. And you have something to do with this. And your dad has a dodecahedron above his head, meaning that both you and your dad work in different timelines to help people cross over during a scary time when our soul is being cut. Is this why we keep seeing the number 1111? It means we were cut. When you get into sacred geometry, you'll notice that there is a void in the center of all the sacred geometrical shapes. These sacred geometrical shapes are connected to planes of existence or timelines of realities. Behind every pleasure and every pain is a sacred geometrical shape, and some of us shift timelines, and before we shift, we actually go into a void. The void is in the center. This void is like a waiting time where we wait to go to our new timeline. Like a thief in the night, our world shifts. If you watch The Hunchback of Notre Dame, they call it Topsy-Turvy Day. If you study the carnival is always celebrated on November 11th. This is 11/11. And so when we're thinking of time or topsy-turvy, upside down world, right side up world, like the character 11 from Stranger Things, this number 11 is about a flipping of time where we, for a brief moment, are cut. And we don't experience being cut, but we do experience the mandala effect and the world shifting and changing. And it makes us feel very uncomfortable, and we don't know what to do. And some of us actually have night terrors about this. According to your piece, you need to balance, give and take, male and female energies. Begin envisioning a sacred geometrical shape, especially the tetrahedron above your head, and get in alignment with your double self. Rise in frequency so that a part of yourself isn't on a parallel timeline where you are ignorant and cannot hear the voice of God or your double. This is something my friend John wrote about some of the symbols that are in your piece. John says that we feed an invisible life force to the fallen angels. And this invisible life force, it happens on the fourth or fifth dimension. If we are polarized by dramas, self-importance, low self-worth, these fears and this chaos feeds the invisible world. Your 7 chakras can be cut into different timelines. To make your timelines come into one timeline where you become more aligned and powerful, we have to take our points of drainage, the 7 points of drainage of our 7 chakras, and bring them into 7 points of power in perfect alignment in order to do great things and to remember and to know what's going on in the unseen world. It's basically the ability to see the unseen world and also the ability to see through people's eyes. Because you help people go from one world to the other where they do not experience death, you may be seeing through their eyes and they will be experiencing terror, which would give you terror. Push pause and read what John has written about these symbols in your piece, especially that boomerang symbol that is a rune symbol. John is saying that when these runes are situated on their side or up and down, this is a communication to you about balancing male and female energies. This is about knowing how to give energy to people like your thoughts and knowing how to take back your power and receive. If you are seeing through someone's eyes, know that you are seeing through their eyes and don't carbon copy their thoughts, their visions, their feelings onto you. You are simply someone who helps them go to their appropriate timeline, kind of like Donnie Darko, like the White Rabbit in Donnie Darko. Explained to Donnie Darko that there is the butterfly effect and that time must be in balance. And so we are learning about how pieces of ourselves are in parallel timelines, and we must raise our frequency in order that we are not under artificial intelligence and under their control and manipulations from the unseen world. Your Taurus field is an ethereal net. It is a net that can be cast through timelines. If your ethereal net gets tangled in a false timeline, let's say an artificial timeline, then a cutting can occur. In order to get back your net that is entangled in someone else's energy, including artificial intelligence like the World Wide Web, we must recapitulate through breathing techniques to take back the power that is being stolen in a false timeline. If this gets too confusing to you, you'll probably want to talk to John. John may have a language that may sound more coherent than what I'm saying to you. I always like to use Dorothy as an analogy of our mind being like a dog. When we allow our dog or mind to be cast out into a reptilian wicked witch, the World Wide Web of false artificial intelligence energy, our house, which is our body, can get swept away by a tornado. And this tornado is your Taurus field. And it can take us to parallel realities under the Wicked Witch of the West, which is a false reality, where suddenly characters that aren't supposed to talk are talking, like the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and a tree that is talking. If we find our consciousness in a parallel reality that is false, we have to walk the golden ratio to awaken and to reveal this falseness by allowing our dog to reveal the great and mighty Wizard of Oz, who is full of hot air balloon. And then suddenly we fly like a pretty little bluebird over the 7 colors of the rainbow back to our original home, which is the real world. So if you are Neo Anderson and you find yourself in a false matrix governed by a Mr. Smith or artificial intelligence, we will want to wake up, Neo, and realize that you are the one, you are an oracle, and you have abilities that has been silenced and cut from even yourself and your father for a very long time. It's time to wake up. If you don't want to wake up, take the blue pill. If you want to wake up, take the red pill. But understand that we have been manipulated, and this awakening is helping us realize that we are in the flip world, which means that the word dog is the flip side of the word God. So if we have been following the dog, we need to realize that we need to follow God, which is the mind of God. And we've always shared our mind with God until our mind was cut by a false God, which is the great and mighty wizard or the wicked witch of the west, this letter W, which is the world, like the World Wide Web. And our real home is Kansas, or someplace where our power and our mind is in alignment with God. It looks like you have some work to do when it comes to envisioning sacred geometrical shapes. Get into symbology and alchemy. This will help to awaken you and your subconscious mind. Recapitulate your past. Recapitulate your dreams. Do breathing exercises. Go underwater. Collect personal power every single day. Realize that there are many forms of manipulation that we have no control over because things happen on the 4th density or the 5th density reality. Because of this, we must hunt for personal power and become awoken on the dream realm so that we have the ability to know the truth. If you can stand in your truth and say, I am nothing and no one, and that I am 0-point energy, a frequency that is in alignment with God, and you empty yourself of all the false things that you have been taught in this matrix, then you will be filled with the spirit and the words and the truth of God and become one mind with God. Then your ethereal net that has been connected to a false world will finally detach from the false world and go back to the real world. It's so similar to the story Ariel, where she signed a contract with a wicked witch to go and live in a world where she has 2 legs in a dual reality, but she had to give up her voice. And this is our memory. So we somehow signed a contract where we gave up our memory and our voice to live in this world, and it's a false world. If you want to go back to the real world, or if we want to go back to the real world, we have to reconnect with God and let go of sin, shame, ignorance, and narcissism, and follow that energy back. It's almost a story of Anakin. You remind me a lot of Anakin. And Anakin was deceived by what? What did Anakin end up wearing at the end? Artificial intelligence, a helmet, a robotic body, living on a robotic world, the Death Star. So in order for us to go back to our original home, we have to align that rainbow to its appropriate timeline or shift, where it is not in an upside down or inverted direction. It is appropriately shifted to its divine purpose. The vampires are the ones who feed off of us in the 4th density when we are cut. And Osiris's body was cut 14 times, and this created 2 worlds. a world of 7 and 7, 7 for her, 7 for him. So somehow you and your dad are in two different worlds. And one world takes the consciousness of someone who died into a parallel world where they do not experience death. But you don't know that you do this. And so there's things that happen to you that caused you pain, suffering, and almost trauma. But just understand that the ripple effect, everything that happens in one world, you have the ripple next to your face, ripples into other worlds. And so we do know what happens. We can see it because of the ripple effect. It's just, we have to raise our frequency to get into alignment with God in order to know all things. So don't fear the reaper and don't be afraid. Just know that you are aligning yourself at this time in this lifetime so that you aren't pulled away by a false world. And you will have to step into becoming Neo and help yourself ascend by learning to fly. This is a very interesting read, and I also encourage you to connect with John, who understands more about these things than I do. And you can connect with him on TikTok as well. So thank you for this reading. And if any of you would like a reading and want to know where you are spiritually and what's happening in the unseen world, you can go to forestfairy.com.